Yeah, making mistakes is part of the journey. Now, if it's careless mistakes, that's one thing. That has to do with overwhelm. But when it comes to making mistakes, this is part of the journey. I think that there's so much pressure to be perfect and to not make mistake and to get it the first time around that it stops a lot of us from either taking action or being so anxious of making a mistake that you end up making a mistake anyway, you know? Because back in the day, I was so scared of making mistakes. I would be so fearful of the repercussions that comes with making mistakes. And like even when I make mistakes, I try to cover that mistake up. Um, I'll get caught up anyway because what you try to hide always come to light. But I really had to reframe how I saw mistakes in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to be able to take constructive criticism. Because one thing about like when you're fearing making a mistake, you become attached to it. You become so sensitive that you can't take criticism. You can't take constructive criticism, because you're so defensive. So one thing that I definitely had to do was I had to go back to when I first feared making a mistake. And I when I thought about it, I thought about when I had my relationship with my dad and how when I made mistakes, how he would reprimand me and I'll be shaking in my boots, right? For making a mistake. So that happened when I was a child, but that never left me. So as a grown ass adult, whenever I would make a mistake, I'd be shaking in my boots as if I'm 8 years old being reprimanded by my dad. Come on, So I really had to overcome those thoughts, those perception of what I thought was a mistake and how I perceived that mistake in order to grow, in order to take constructive criticism, in order to gain enough information, because that's how you grow, is through your mistakes. I'm not talking about careless mistakes, just regular mistakes. So how is it that you overcome your mistakes? How is it that you still go on while making mistakes? And how do you learn from them?